Hello, and welcome back to Introducing Persistence. In this lesson, we're going to write the getMyLibrary from serial file method, modify our classes to allow them to be serialized, and then run our test suite to test the entire application. So let's get started. We'll open the MyUtilities class for editing and go to the getMyLibrary from serial file method, maximize. We'll delete the auto-generated code. Next, we'll add the new method as follows. Give ourselves a little bit of space at the bottom here. So in the first line, we create our return variable, myLibraryML, and set it to null. Then we open the outer try block, and this is the tricky nested part where we create a new object input stream, OIS, and then inside that constructor we create a new buffered input stream, and then inside that constructor we create a new file input stream with the argument file name. Move up so we have a little more room. Then we do our inner try block, and here we create a new object type called obj equals ois.readObject. Then we do an if statement, if obj instance of my library. Then we open up the block for the if statement. Then we cast my library, so we say ml equals a cast of obj into a myLibrary object. Then we come all the way out of the try block and do a finally, and we do OIS close. Then we come out of our outer try block and catch our exception, and we go catch, and then again we're using the generic exception EX, and again move it up. We're just going to do the print stack trace of the EX. Then we come down to the bottom and we return the ML variable. And then we'll save. So this method is similar to some of the other methods we've written. Again, we have this finally block and inner try block inside the outer try block. Here, we're using the mirror image of what we did in the other method. We're creating an object input stream that's wrapped around a buffered input stream that's wrapped around a file input stream. So it's exactly the same as we had in the save method, except these are input streams instead of output streams. Then here, inside the inner try block, we're creating just a generic object variable, obj, and this read object is what is doing the work of reading the serialized object out of the file named by file name and putting it back into a Java object. And then this is exactly the same code as we've used several times. We check and see if object is an instance of myLibrary, and if it is, then we cast, we set myML equal to a cast of obj into a myLibrary object. And then again, inside the finally block, we do the OIS close, and again we catch a generic exception, so no matter what exceptions are thrown up here, we'll catch them all and just do the print stack trace. Then finally, we return the myLibrary object, which, if this cast is successful, will have a myLibrary object in it, otherwise it'll be set to null. Now let's run our MyUtilities test. We'll open up the test class. MyUtilities, we'll right click here, run as JUnit test. And this time the test doesn't succeed. Our save to serial file doesn't succeed, and it says the file should have been saved, and it wasn't. So we've got a little bit of work to do. If we open up the console, we see we have a number of messages, some of which are from the other test. So what we can do here is, we know these tests are okay. Let's just rerun this one test, save to serial file, and we can do that by right-clicking on it, selecting Run, and now it'll just run that one test. So now when we look at the console, we're just seeing the output from the one that failed. Now the error says not serializable exception, and if we look, we can see my utilities line 112 is the line that triggered the error. So if we click on that, maximize, we can see that it's the right object method that triggered the error. If we look at the Java doc for that, it says that it throws a not serializable exception. Some object to be serialized does not implement the java.io.serializable interface. Now earlier we mentioned that we needed to make two small changes to our classes in order to use object serialization, and we haven't done that yet. One of the changes is to implement the serializable interface in our MyLibrary class. Since we will also be including person and book objects when we serialize the MyLibrary object, we need to add this interface to these classes as well. So let's do that now. We can start with any class. Let's start with person. So we'll go back to the Package Explorer, open up the person class, and all we do here is, after the name of the class, we add implements serializable. And we see that Eclipse automatically added the import statement up here. In general, when you implement an interface in a class, it means that you will implement all of the methods required by that interface. An interface is like a class with empty methods. It doesn't tell you how to write the methods, it just provides the method name and signature, and if you implement the interface, you have to implement all of those methods. Now the serializable interface doesn't include any methods, so it doesn't require us to do anything other than declare that we implement the interface. This type of interface is sometimes called a tag interface. So now we'll save. Actually, let's copy this code, and then we'll add the same line to the book and MyLibrary class. So we can just add that right there and save, and then we'll open up the MyLibrary and let's maximize. And save. And now if we go back to the JUnit and rerun our test, now the save to serial file test succeeds. So that was a pretty small change, but we said that there were two small changes we needed to make for serialization. Let's look at the other one. If we go back to one of the classes, we can see that we get a compiler warning here. We get the yellow guy there, the yellow icon up there, and this underline in yellow, and when we hover, it says a serializable class, MyLibrary, does not declare a static final serial version UID. Now what does this mean? When we get an object back from a serialized format, the JRE needs to know what type of object it is. It does this by using a unique serial number for each class or type. If we don't provide a serial number, the compiler calculates one automatically. The serial number is saved with the serialized object. The serial number is calculated based on the fields in the class, so if they change, the serial number will change. This ensures that the deserialized object will fit back into the fields of the class. This scheme works fine as long as none of the fields of the class are changed. Suppose, however, that you have a real MyLibrary application and have entered all of your books and friends and saved it to a serial file. Now you get the great idea to add phone number to the person class. You add the phone number field, recompile your application, and guess what? You won't be able to read back your serialized file that you saved as a MyLibrary object, because now the compiler is calculating a different serial number for the person class, and it doesn't match the one that was saved in the serialized file. So when the program tries to cast the saved object back to a MyLibrary, it won't work. To avoid this type of problem, we can add our own serial number to the class. That way, we have control over the versions of our classes. In the phone number example, we could use the existing serialized file fine as long as the phone number was an optional field or we supplied a default value. So this is a long explanation of why the compiler is giving us this warning. Fortunately, we can use Quick Fix to fix compiler warnings just like we do with errors. Warnings display in the Problems view as well as the Edit window, and we can fix them from either place. So let's fix the first one from the Problems view. So if we double click here, we can bring the Problems view into focus. And we see all three warnings here for the book, the MyLibrary, and the person. So if we just click on the first one, do Quick Fix, and we'll say Add Generated Serial Version ID. Say OK. And it's added this long number that was calculated automatically for us. When we save the file, our warning disappears there and there. And then we can do the same thing for the MyLibrary. We'll use Control 1. And again, add generated serial version ID. OK. We'll save. And then do the last one with a Control 1. Add generated serial version ID. OK. Save. And now our warnings are gone. Let's take a look to see what Quick Fix changed. Open this up. We can see that it added a new field called serial version UID and gave it this very long number automatically. And the JRE now will use this serial number when checking to see what the type is of a serialized object. Now let's rerun our entire test suite to make sure that everything still works. So we'll open up the Package Explorer, go down to our All Tests. Now we need to add the MyUtilities test to this, so we just add a comma here and then add MyUtilities test.class. That'll add it to the all tests. So we'll save, then we'll go run as JUnit test, and all of our tests pass. And we can see that the MyUtilities test was also run as part of the test suite. We've seen that there are many options that we can configure inside Eclipse. One example is compiler warnings and errors. If we go to Window, Preferences, Java, Compiler, Errors and Warnings, we can see a long list of items categorized by type. If we expand the potential programming problems, the first item on the list is serialized class without serial version UID. This is just the problem we were working on. And we can see it's set to give us a warning. Now for any of these options, we have three possibilities. We can either say generate a compiler error, generate a compiler warning, or ignore. If we go down to this third item, possible accidental Boolean assignment, this could help prevent us using a single equal sign when we really want to use the double equal sign to check for equality. So as we can see, there are a lot of options in here to make the compiler work exactly the way we want it to. At this point, we have successfully added the methods needed to save and get a MyLibrary object from a disk file using both XML and Java object serialization. If you like, you can modify the MyLibrary main method to save and get a serialized file, and then recreate the persistence.jar file using the same procedure as before. Congratulations! You have now completed the Introducing Persistence tutorial. I hope you've learned a lot and enjoyed seeing some cool Eclipse functionality. If you have comments about this tutorial or suggestions for future tutorial topics, please post your ideas on the website's user forum. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I'm Mark Dexter saying so long for now.